So yesterday was the first day of the second impeachment trial of Donald Trump, and we had some hints that it was going to be an absolutely embarrassing, pathetic attempt at an impeachment defense. And one of the reasons we thought that was that multiple times in legal briefs submitted by Donald Trump's various beleaguered legal teams, they misspelled United States. They misspelled it as Unitas States. And that probably was not the auspicious start that they were going for. And it ended up being an absolutely farcical presentation. Yesterday was a day, it was day one, but at the same time, it wasn't, in the sense that the topic of 4 hours of debate yesterday, 4 hours of presentations, rather. There was not debate among senators. The reason for yesterday's 4 hours of presentations was merely to convince the Senate one way or the other about whether the Senate has the authority and the jurisdiction to hold an impeachment trial of a president that is no longer president, a former president, a past president. And why you would have the Senate decide about constitutionality, I don't know. And many legal scholars were not clear as to why the Senate was being put in the position of having to decide whether it was constitutional. But that's what yesterday was about. The Senate decided, not by a huge margin, 56-44, that yes, the Senate can hold an impeachment trial of a president who is no longer the sitting president. Democratic Congressman Jamie Raskin opened the proceedings as one of the impeachment managers. He spoke really well. Included in his presentation an absolutely devastating video of what happened on January 6th, cutting back and forth from what Donald Trump was saying and what was happening at the Capitol. And then it was Trump's lawyer's turn. And a guy named Bruce Castor spoke. We covered it live, and he droned on for about 50 minutes about nothing germane to the impeachment of Donald Trump. Now, you might say, well, that must be an exaggeration, David. It must have been somewhat related to the impeachment. I couldn't figure out how. Our live audience of about 40,000 people couldn't figure out how it was related. Bruce Castor going on about British law before the Revolutionary War, his personal relationships with some of the senators in the chamber. It's absurd. It's unintelligible. Let's look at some clips. Here is Bruce Castor starting with his own childhood and the political preferences of his parents.
When I was growing up in suburban Philadelphia, my parents were big fans of Senator Everett Dirksen from Illinois. And Senator Dirksen recorded a series of lectures that my parents had on a record. And we still know what records are, right? On the thing you put the needle down on and you play it.
So that type of stuff went on about 10 minutes. Then Castor started talking about how cool and great senators are as individuals and how senators tend to like the states that they are from.
Their families. They love the states that they represent. There isn't a member in this room who has not used the term, I represent the great state of fill in the blank. Why? Because they're all great? Yeah. But you think yours is greater than others because these are your people. These are the people that sent you here to do their work.
It genuinely seemed like maybe Bruce Castor prepared for some other trial about something different than the impeachment of Donald Trump, because none of what he said made any sense. It became like an open mic night, which then continued with more discussion of what it means to be in the United States Senate as far as Bruce Castor was concerned.
So senators are patriots. Senators are family men and women. They're fierce advocates for the great state in which they represent. And somewhere far down that list of attributes, way below patriot and way below love of family and country and way below fierce advocates for their states, far down, at least that's what I thought anyway, and I still think that. Somewhere far down that list, senators have some obligation to be partisans.
If you're wondering what on earth he's talking about, did you miss something? We were all wondering that yesterday. It made no sense whatsoever. I had no idea what this guy was talking about. And indeed, Donald Trump was not happy. We'll talk more about this later in the show, but here's a report from CNN about just how displeased, and rightly so, how displeased Trump was with this.
Not think that was a strong opening argument, and then to have the first attorney admit that he believed the House impeachment managers did a good job also was confusing to a lot of people on the president's team. But yes, Trump was not happy with that performance. He was borderline screaming over what was going on as he was talking to people about this.
It wasn't just Donald Trump who was not pleased with what Bruce Castor did. Fox News host Sean Hannity himself couldn't even resist mentioning multiple times that it was a meandering presentation that Hannity didn't really understand. Here he is saying it to Republican Senator Ted Cruz.
I thought it was a little bit of a weak start. I'm not being critical, just a little lackluster, meandering to me, needed a little more focus.
Needs focus, meandering, quite an understatement if you saw the 50 minutes of atrocities from Bruce Castor there. And then this is even better when interviewing Donald Trump's other lawyer, David Schoen. Again, Hannity says he didn't really understand that first part.
Your arguments, I loved your passion. I thought it started a little meandering. It was sort of like a lot of free associating in the beginning, and I'm not attacking your partner. I don't know him at all.
So even Sean Hannity has to concede, in his own words, in his own understated way, this was absolutely off the wall bonkers. And it was also even some Republican senators that noticed this. Here is Republican Senator Bill Cassidy saying, I didn't know what he was talking about. If I just have to vote based on what I see there, they didn't make the case, Trump's lawyers, for anything.
You listen to it, it speaks for itself. It was disorganized, random, had nothing. They talked about many things, but they didn't talk about the issue at hand. And so if I'm an impartial juror and I'm trying to make a decision based upon the facts as presented on this issue, then the House managers did a much better job.
It was really like a verbal ink blot, free association, a kind of senatorial Rorschach test of sorts. Here's 50 minutes of words, mostly words. What can you make out of them? What do you see in there? And even many Republican senators saying, I can't see anything in there. That doesn't make any sense. As I was watching it, with our audience on the live stream yesterday, I was saying, does Trump fire this guy by today? As of yet, he has not been fired. But later on in the show, we are going to have a report about what exactly was going on with Donald Trump, including apparently screaming as Bruce Castor was making his presentation. We'll see if day 2 goes any better for Trump's legal team. That's coming up a little bit later today. One of our sponsors is Four Sigmatic, the company best known for their delicious mushroom coffee. Four Sigmatic's mushroom coffee is organic, fair trade, single origin Arabica coffee with both lion's mane and chaga mushrooms. Chaga mushrooms have actually been shown to have potential in supporting the immune system in peer-reviewed studies. I've been drinking Four Sigmatic coffee a lot lately. It actually doesn't taste anything like mushrooms. It just tastes like any delicious coffee, but it's really easy on my stomach, doesn't give me any jittery feeling or a midday crash, and they have over 20,000 5-star reviews. And best of all, if you don't love it, you'll get 100% of your money back because they stand behind their product. You've got nothing to lose by giving it a try. Four Sigmatic is giving my audience up to 40% off and free shipping when you go to foursigmatic.com/Pakman. The link is right underneath this video.